Hello and welcome to the Sensibly Speaking podcast. This is Chris Shelton, the critical thinker at large, coming at you for another hour of power here on the Sensibly Speaking network with, let's see here. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and with video here on YouTube. All right. So this is the second re-recording I am doing of a show that I recorded with this guest about a month or so ago, and we did a great show. And then I totally screwed up and lost it, and because I'm an idiot. And so we are now putting that back together. This is something I have been wanting to do. We set this up. I mean, I've been working on this for a couple months. This has been a topic, an area of interest for a lot of people who have been watching Scientology over the years. There's been questions about this, academic papers written about it, so this is my dive into this, and this has to do with the occult, and it has to do with L. Ron Hubbard and his involvement with the occult. I did a podcast with Joe Zimhart that was just posted a couple weeks ago, where we dived into Madame Blavatsky and the history of, a lot of the thinking and philosophy. Well, this whole podcast is going to be about the manifestation of some of that through Aleister Crowley and through the OTO. The Ordo Templi Orientis, the Temple of the East. And what I've got here is this is just so awesome. I'm so happy about this. So Marco Visconti is somebody who has actually been involved in the OTO, is a believer in magic, and is somebody who understands it and has actually even advised. There was a show called Dark Angel. It went for 2 seasons on CBS All Access. And if you haven't seen it, you might want to check it out. It's a little weird, but it's all about Jack Parsons. And we're going to talk all about that Jack Parsons in this show. So you're going to learn all about this stuff. But he actually advised on that show for the OTO stuff. So, Marco, welcome to my show.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's a pleasure to be back, I would suppose. Even if none of the listeners know, but yes, as you said, we've been here before. Where do we start?
Yeah, right. Okay, well, we're going to get right into it. So first off, I guess we should start with we're gonna be talking history here, and we're gonna be talking from the concentrated area of attention is the 1940s, mid 1940s, when L. Ron Hubbard stumbled into Jack Parsons' home in Pasadena, California. Which, by the way, I love throwing this factoid out whenever this comes up. I grew up 5 minutes away from this place. In Pasadena. We bought our first house right around the corner from this. I think literally less than 2 miles away. And so I didn't even know, I didn't even know. Anyway, so this is when L. Ron Hubbard stumbled into Jack Parsons' lodge or home or mansion. It's been described various ways, and became involved in a whole world. So let's go ahead and get into that world. So first off, Marco, let's go ahead and let the audience know, because I usually lead with this. Who are you, and what's your experience with this topic?
Okay. I was drawn first to the occult, to magic, and to the specific kind of magic that Aleister Crowley founded in my teens. Let's say I grew up with it, which is something different than what a Scientology grew up with, because as we will see, there are no precise structures in magic, and specifically the term we're going to use a lot is Thelema. Thelema is, you can say Thelema the same way you say Scientology. Let's say that's the philosophy, that's the system. Okay. I grew up with it, and at the end of my teens, I was initiated for the first time in one organization, one order called the AA, which, as I like to always to joke about, is not the Alcoholics Anonymous.
Right.
But let's say it can be that name can be understood as Argenteum Astrum, which means the silver star in Latin. And that was the AA was the first order, the first organization that Aleister Crowley founded in 1906, 1907. And the best way I can describe the AA is, imagine like Hogwarts, okay? So more or less, for those of you who have read Harry Potter, and I believe there are many.
But probably without the Quidditch.
Yes, probably without that.
Without the Quidditch, okay. Damn it.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely without the Quidditch, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There are ways to fly, but not with a broom. Let's put it like that.
Oh yeah, I can fly once.
So I would say, like, yeah, to fully explain what I'm relating to, in many ways, the inspiration J.K. Rowling got, for the idea of the magical schools comes from the Victorian revival of magic, and that is, the time that goes between 1875 with the theosophy of Blavatsky that I guess you already touched upon, up until the Edwardian era, the 1910s, 1920s, where there was a lot of interest in Europe, especially in the UK, here in London, where I'm based, on these groups, these orders, these schools where you could go and learn magic. Without going too much into detail, the AA was the continuation of another famous order called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, at least in Crowley's mind. Crowley was a member of the Golden Dawn.
Let me say that slowly for everybody. Make sure that's the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn.
Exactly.
And that came out of Germany, right?
The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was founded here in the UK by 3 Freemasons. And they
in the UK, okay.
Yes, in London. But they claim that the inspiration came from Germany.
Right.
As you can imagine, this is a sprawling network. So I'm trying to be. Let's try to be as focused as we can, even if it's I'm pretty sure that people in the comments below will, especially those who know, will go and nitpick here and there. But unfortunately, we need to try and be focused. Let's say that for the sake of simplicity, it was founded here in the UK, in London, with inspiration from Germany. Crowley was a member of it. And then he got, he got entrenched into sort of political plays inside the order, and he got expelled after a very famous, battle of Blythe Road, whereby he was thrown down the stairs by somebody that was actually sent there by William Butler Yeats, the famous poet. And this already should let you know that, and let the listeners understand that, back in the day, the mindset was really, this is real, this is respectable, really famous, respectable people are part of it. That was the same thing with Freemasonry at the time, and I would say it still is. So yeah, just to give you an idea, members of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn were, like I said, William Butler Yeats. There is Conan Doyle is said to have been a member. Algernon Blackwood, another famous writer, was said to be a member. Or famous actress of the time, Florence Farr, was a member. And just to give you an idea, Florence Farr was so famous at the time that right now it would be like, I don't know, Taylor Swift would be a member of something like that, and be very open about it. To be very open, like, this is what I do, this is what I believe in.
Or maybe a real example might be Madonna being involved with the Kabbalah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or Tom Cruise in Scientology.
Yes, pretty much, absolutely.
All right.
But like I said, this is pretty much like what happened before the other order came into the fray, and that is the OTO, or Ordo Templi Orientis. Now, the OTO was not founded by Crowley. It was founded by another group of Freemasons in Germany at the turn of the 19th century. Of the 20th century, so around 1902, 1903. Crowley became a member of it a few years later, and then in 1912, he was, let's say, invited to be part of what's called the Sovereign Sanctuary of the Gnosis, that the top level, let's say, the top dogs of the organization, because the then Grandmaster, Theodore Royce, alleged that he already knew the magical secrets of the 9th degree, which is the highest level you can go, pretty much, whereby you...
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. So this was a group now, or these were groups now that were sort of modeling themselves on that old Masonic idea. And this came, and I think this was also Blavatsky had her hands in this, of the idea of levels of ascension or
Absolutely.
levels of indoctrination, and that these become secret levels, or there's even confidential levels. And this is the roots of what I mean. This is really cool. I love learning about this stuff, or talking about this stuff, because this is the roots of why Scientology has a bridge to total freedom. It's the same modeling.
Absolutely.
And it's not original at all to L. Ron Hubbard. It was just he finally, oh yeah, I should do what they did, So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there.
No, you're absolutely right. And we will see, I guess, at the end of this chat we're having, where that Hubbard really did not invent much.
Right.
Let's say he was vastly inspired. Let's not say that, maybe, or maybe he straight up plagiarized.
Right.
A lot of ideas.
Did he reboot the OTO, or was it a reimagining?
Well, we don't know, right?
Right.
I mean, as an ex-Scientology, maybe you can. I don't think that you guys were ever told anything like this, like that there was sort of absolutely. So
no. Everything Hubbard did was his own thing. It was all his invention or discovery. Blah, yeah, etc. All right, please carry on. Yes,
thank you. So let's say so. Now we are now in 1912. Crowley is invited in the OTO, which is yet another organization, and I'm speaking about this different organization because I think it's important for the listeners to understand that there's a lot of similarities in Thelema and Scientology, and we will see them. But the difference that I'm trying to outline here is that there is not one organization for Thelema. Thelema is, you can say Thelema is Christianity, Thelema is Buddhism, Thelema is Hinduism. But then there are several organizations that kind of do different things, actually. For instance, like the AA, the Argento Masterum, is more like a mystical school where you learn like the nitty-gritty on how to travel into the astral plane. Whereby the OTO is more a Masonic structure that should allegedly teach you the brotherhood of men, and it doesn't, by the way. and it should prepare you by going to that ladder of degrees, which are very similar to the bridge to eternal freedom in Scientology. It should prepare the initiate to work sex alchemical secrets. So it's similar but different. Of course, I just wanted to throw that out because you cannot say that the OTO is the whole of Thelema or the AA is the whole of Thelema. There's a lot of it's very multifaceted, and I guess this is where it's different.
So kind of, would it be an accurate analogy to compare it to denominations of Christianity?
In many ways, yes and no, because everybody if somebody is a member of the OTO, you believe the same thing as somebody who's a member of the AA. Most of the times, this membership overlap. Not all the time, most of the time. It's different what you do, what you gather to do. Okay.
Okay.
Let's say the OTO teaches you specific rituals, whereby the AA teaches you different kind of rituals. And I guess to go in more detail would be just too technical. So
fair enough. And I don't want to try to overcomplicate or overburden everybody. We're already throwing a lot of stuff at them. I just want to I want to provide decent analogies that they'll get, and I think this is a decent one. But there is also the fact that while they draw on this philosophical base of Thelema, there are different interpretations of those beliefs
Oh,
from one
absolutely.
person to the next to the next. I mean, they don't,
Absolutely.
this is not a solid rooted base of agreement that everybody's on the same page with, I
Absolutely
think,
not.
as we're going to see. So, okay. So fair enough. Just wanted to clarify that.
No, in fact, what every Thelemite should agree on is into reading and trying to understand the Book of the Law. That is like the text that Aleister Crowley received in 1904 in Cairo. Interesting, today, 8th of April, is the 116th anniversary of the reception of the Book of the Law. So, yeah,
Oh.
exactly. So,
well, the universe confluenced to do this podcast.
It's synchronized once again, apparently.
There we go.
But like you said, there will be as many interpretations of the Book of the Law and thus of Thelema as Thelemites are out there. Crowley always tried to tell people that everybody should go back and listen to what he had to say. But to be fair, he also insisted that people should find their own wills and do that. Over the years, as this organization devolved to the state where in which we found them in this day and age, which is very very pathetic, to be fair. You will see that there's a lot of people at the top that trying to establish their own gospels, and not many people follow them, to be fair. But we're going ahead of us, so let's go back let's go back to history.
Yep.
So 1912, OTO, Crowley becomes like one of the members of the Sovereign Sanctuary, so one of the leaders. In the 1920s, after Theodore Royce dies, he becomes the worldwide leader of the OTO, and I guess that was the time. Imagine that's between World War I and World War II. Crowley was trying to establish the law of Thelema across the world, as in fact Crowley, and I guess we Thelemites really do believe that Thelema is the next. It should be like the next bigger philosophy, bigger religion, like Christianity is today. Some Thelemites will understand that as Thelema being anti-Christian. For me, it's the obvious continuation of the Christian message, which it's something that will sound weird to many people, but that's my perception. But the point is that so Crowley was trying to establish it as this, in many ways, the new Christianity. And at the time, what's the best, I would say, blueprint for fraternal organization? It's Freemasonry. So he finds himself at the head of a paramasonic organization, the OTO, and he tries to really invest into it. He wouldn't succeed. The OTO has been a huge failure because nobody really bought into it. It was too weird for Freemasons. That's the reality of that. There's a fantastic book, which unfortunately is out of print, and it goes for crazy amount of money, called The Unknown God by Martin Starr. Martin Starr is a Thelemite, 33-degree Freemason of the Southern Jurisdiction of Ancient and Accepted Rite, Scottish Rite, in America. He lives in Chicago. I think he still lives in Chicago. He wrote this fantastic book about pretty much the OTO in the United States. And it explains in one of the chapters how at some point Crowley really had a chance because he had a way in with top-level Freemasons in America, 33-degree Freemasons in America. But the point is, in Detroit, but the point is that these Freemasons, after a few months of trying to work the system, they were like, this is too weird. This is not Masonic. I mean, yeah, it feels Masonic, it kind of looks Masonic, but the message is too weird for us. We don't want to have anything to do with it. And this is mostly because for the listeners that maybe don't know it in detail, Freemasonry as a huge is based on mysteries and allegories of the Old Testament and then of the New Testament. Freemasonry tells that
just to make sure everybody gets that, we're allegories.
Allegories, yes, sorry.
Yes. Okay. Good.
Yeah, when you join Freemasonry, when you want to join Freemasonry, you are told that a man of good, of good state, of good reports or good morals, which means if you're not a felon, they all can join, regardless of their beliefs. But the reality there is that's true. But the reality there is that what you do in a Masonic lodge is you study allegories and symbologies based on the Old Testament for the most, and in some points on the New Testament. Crowley changed that all completely for the OTO and create an infrastructure of Thelema. So, the names were different, the stories were different. Yeah, maybe the actions were the same or similar, but for Freemasons in Detroit in the 1930s, things were like, nope, this is way too weird. And that's it. The OTO stayed like that forever. In the OTO that eventually I joined was a reconstruction of a reconstruction of a reconstruction, no matter what they tell on to the outsiders on their website, lying about how many people are actually members. But that's something that happens from Scientology as well, I hear.
Yeah, it seems to be kind of a thing for a lot of these groups.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the OTO today claims to have between 4,000 and 4,500 members. There's less than 2,000 members worldwide, of which I would say 1,500 are not engaging. So
exactly. It's more like an eighth of the size.
Exactly. But I would say right now it's even that eighth of an eighth. It's way more than the actual membership of the OTO in Crowley's times. In Crowley's times, we're talking about maybe a couple of hundreds, maybe at the most, scattered.
So it was kind of a cult of personality for him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Despite me keep being a Thelemite, and in the way, like, I like the finer points, and since I am a practitioner of magic, and I think that it works magically, and of course, let me clarify something here right now, which I always try to clarify. Magic is not science. I don't claim that I can, do anything that science can do. Magic is more something. It's something that allows you to look at the world with a different lens and maybe get some sort of insight from it. I cannot fly, but I can invoke angels and demons. So there's that. but
I'll take it.
So back to Crowley. Like, Crowley's time. Crowley's time. We 200 people top, and that's when the connection with Parsons and the connection with Pasadena and eventually with Hubbard comes to fruition, because we're now moving the timeline a bit further still, and we're now late 30s, early 40s. World War II is raging, and believe it or not, the only active and I would say thriving OTO lodge in the world is in Pasadena. It's called Agape Lodge number 2. Agape Lodge number 1 was in Vancouver, and Agape Lodge number 2 is actually thriving, mostly because of Jack Parsons and the money that Jack Parsons brought to Thelema. Because as Strange Angel, the CBS series that it showed very well, Parsons at some point, through his involvement with the U.S. Army, working on propellant fuel for jets, and he became a millionaire. He would lose everything, of course, as usually happens. But I must say that he was very dedicated, and he was actually, funneling the money back into Agape Lodge and back into Thelema. He was striving. They were doing it. They were trying to live the Thelemic life. Imagine the idea of a lodge at the time was what Crowley would actually call a prophet's house, kind of similar to the Abbey of Thelema that he tried to get to start in Cefalù in Italy between 1920 and 1923. So it was like an interesting hodgepodge of people coming from all walks of life, artists, LGBT people that at the time was they were very, it was difficult for them to be free and leave their sexuality free. But in an OTO lodge, you could do it because Thelema tells you that every man and every woman is a star, and you have no right but to do your will. So, if that was very empowering at the time.
For sure, for sure. And according to Russell Miller's biography of Hubbard, Parsons Place, which was a large house,
Hmm.
again described as a mansion by some in Pasadena, there was open to the, I guess, what they would have called at the time this, or maybe they wouldn't have used these words, but I think it fits. The hippy dippy culture, the
Yeah,
fringe, the people that weren't particularly wanted at all the highbrow social parties. They'd show up, and Parsons was also involved in the science fiction community. He would
absolutely.
go to science fiction. He knew science fiction writers. He knew, he would go to and have meetings and such with them. This is how Hubbard learned his name, because
No,
Hubbard
no,
was in
absolutely.
science fiction writer circles. So, just kind of connecting some dots there for people as far as some of my other earlier content that they might have listened to, and where some of these dots start connecting, and we'll make it even clearer as we go here.
So it's definitely like the situation where you have this almost like this madhouse where everybody will just accept you for who you are, and the door is open at first because, as I said, there was a lot of money, again in the range of millions, so there was like no problem. And then eventually, as Parson became more and more erratic, and then eventually he ended up losing his contract with U.S. Army. That's because he needed lodgers. That's when Hubbard comes into the fray, because Hubbard, saw an ad on the newspaper that we were looking for, crazy people to join their commune and pay rent. And he shows up, and the rest is history, I would say, because yeah, Hubbard was very dedicated. It's interesting that almost no Scientologist knows about it, because of course the church keeps it quiet. But yeah, I mean, Hubbard was full on into magical practices. He was full on into Thelema, and he became Parsons, right hand man, up until the moment that then, of course, eventually he would, you know, betray him and leave him with Sarah and the yacht and money. But yeah, they became a team. So that's it. That's the story
Oh,
pretty much.
okay. All right, good. Now, um, we'll get more into what they were doing, and I'd like
Hmm.
to now step back to, we've thrown this word around, Thelema, and so we've got these groups that have evolved from the late 1800s, early 1900s forward. And we've got this guy, Aleister Crowley. He's over in the UK. He stays in the UK. He is somebody Hubbard would later refer to as his friend, even though Crowley never met him, didn't like him, etc. So these are the sort of the cast of characters in the background. So now let's go into what is this? What were these people trying to, what were they believing and trying to accomplish? What
Okay.
is Thelema?
Thelema, first of all, it's a Greek word. It's a Greek word that means will, and that is, the will to accomplish. In many ways, it can be related on a philosophical level to the will to power of Friedrich Nietzsche. The ability to know who you are, to discover who you are by working on yourself, working on your ego, in order eventually to exalt the ego to the point where you become almost like the best version of yourself that you could ever be. And by doing that, you become one with the universe. Of course, I'm trying to simplify the concept, but that's what dilemma is. That's the aim of this system. It's to enable each and everybody to become the best version of themselves. In it all I'd say like Thelema is synthesized in the Book of the Law, which is this little book here.
Yeah, a little
And
tiny book. You know, I was really surprised. I went and got that thing and tried to read it, and I had a pretty difficult time trying to make any sense out of that.
It is a received text. It is a channel text. It is in many ways a cipher, and you will have you can take like a lifetime of studying it and only scratch the surface. But I would say that the process of engaging with this, trying to solve this riddle, trying to solve this cipher, is what eventually enable you to work on yourself, to get insight about who you truly are, and eventually do your true will, do who you're supposed to do what you're supposed to do and be what you're supposed to be. So that's what Thelema is in a nutshell.
I'd like to clarify maybe right now, since we've brought up this point of will and doing your will, that there's this fairly infamous quote from Crowley about "do what thou wilt shall be the total of the law or the sum of the law."
It says, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law."
Yes.
Love is the and then there's a counterpoint to that, and that is love is the law, love under will. Now that those two aphorisms, along with a third one that says every man and every woman is a star, they're all found in the Book of the Law, in the Liber Alva Legis. And I would say, to me, those are the three aphorisms that encapsulate the system. Every man and every woman is a star means that each and every one has the potential, the birthright to become a star. And a star means achieve, the best version of yourself, be who you are to be. In more religious terms, if you want, it's almost say like you have the birthright to become your own God, which is something that sounds very lofty, but that's what magic should allow you to get to. Now, about do what the will shall be the whole of the law, as you said, it's been considered, it's been read in many different ways by many different people. It does not mean do whatever you want. It does not mean, just follow every whim, just do it for the sake of doing it, whatever passes through your mind. In fact, is a very stern request, and that is, you must find your true will. You must become the best version of yourself and do that. That is actually explained by the second aphorism, that is, love is the law, love under will, because the nature of that will is love, and love is considered it's not so much like the eros of the Greek, but more like the agape of the Greek, and that is a love for humanity, a love for the universe, and a love for the all, as opposed of just like a self-obsessed love, or even romantic feeling, or even lust. It's a different kind of love. Then, of course,
So we're not talking romantic love. We're talking more about a compassion, an understanding, an affinity for everything. It's not just other humans. It's all life everywhere.
Absolutely.
The universe
Absolutely.
itself as an entity.
Absolutely.
See, this is interesting because that part definitely got left out of Hubbard's translation of this. If we're going to look at, Thelema as a base of knowledge or a philosophy upon which these various organizations have built their creeds and built their belief systems and even their Masonic levels, Scientology is really, in a way, I kind of cut into the spoiler right now, but in a way, just another manifestation of this.
Yeah, in many ways it is.
Except that Hubbard sort of carefully excised that whole business of love. I mean, he talks about affinity, but Hubbard didn't really believe in that kind of love. He demonstrated that in his own personal life, but also in the way that Scientology itself and of course later on the Sea Organization was put together. We don't have to get into all that right now. I'm just kind of listening to what you're saying and throwing a little feedback out there because people have asked about this. People have wondered about this. I've wondered about this for years. what exactly is the occult connection between
Hmm.
Scientology and this earlier stuff he was involved in. And some people, and of course, the church has poo-pooed all of it. Um, Other people, former Scientologists, even go in and go, well, yeah, he might have messed around with, Parsons or something, but that, this is all his thing. And I think we're kind of already showing that no,
Yeah.
this wasn't his thing. This was very much a work of other people that he was simply taking and renaming. And even renaming, he didn't rename that well, because Golden Dawn, for example, is something that he led with. I mean, when Scientology came out in 1954, 55, he's given lectures and under the rubric or umbrella of the Golden Dawn.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, you can buy those lectures in Church of Scientology today. They're a whole CD set called the Lectures of the Golden Dawn.
Wow.
You can look it up on Google. It's at their Bridge Publications warehouse site. So I have to draw these comparisons because they're fresh on my mind, because they just pile up. There's so many of them as you're talking.
No, absolutely. There are countless of those. I would say that Hubbard was not the first person to appropriate the ideas of others. I would say the entirety of the Western esoteric tradition is somebody coming back and working on what came before, but then never really, attributing the work that he did to others. I mean, Crowley did is exactly the same. There's a lot of texts that you find in the AA curriculum or in the OTO rituals that are straight up, copied from the Golden Dawn, copied from other things. Crowley was very prolific, as Hubbard was. He was a great writer, I believe, and he did come with a lot of amazing original material. But unfortunately, the reality is there. Like, I mean, what Hubbard did with the Golden Dawn and with Thelema, Crowley did it with the Golden Dawn and with something else as well, with theosophy, with alchemy, and with other systems. But what's interesting to me, and you already touched upon, the fact that the Church of Scientology completely doesn't even remotely discuss these influences is, to me, it's absolutely like crazy, because from an external viewpoint, from somebody who's I only read Dianetics. I never sat down. I was tempted many ways to walk in Goodge Street in London and just get the emitter test, because just to experience it. But I never did. I read Dianetics many years ago, and then I got interested because of the Parsons connection. And from a magician perspective, it's like, this is it. It's just been repurposed almost entirely. The system, like the degree system, it's a bridge. Same thing. The OTO levels. Sorry, the OTO levels. Yeah,
right. That's right.
I was thinking.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, the OTO levels. Oh, okay. We discussed this privately. The concept of the thetan in Scientology, it's different from the concept of the holy guardian angel, but there's a lot of similarities as well. There's levels, there's points of overlap. The massed universe, the matter, energy, space, and time universe, that is straight up alchemical. That is straight up magical. That's it. And then through when we were preparing this chat, all the discussions about the affirmations came along, and that was
yes.
And I mean, maybe you can introduce it. And
we're going to get to that. I've already pulled them up. Yeah, we're definitely going to get to that. I wanted to cover this base stuff first, then for sure.
So the back to Thelema. Then there's like a series of rituals. There's a series of practices.
Let me interrupt you, because I realized I interrupted you earlier and I might have thrown you off. You were mentioning 3 basic principles, and I remember we covered the first 2, and then I think I interrupted you because I said, Hubbard took the whole love component out.
Yeah.
What was the third one? I don't think I got that one.
The third one is love is the law of the will. That's the third one. That's the third one. That's the third one. Absolutely.
So the first one was the.
do do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love and the will, and every man and every woman is a star. Those three are,
those were the three.
like,
that's right. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
those like the pillars, to me, the pillars of Thelema.
Yep.
It's I think we were discussing the point that, you know, Hubbard eventually completely excised any reference to love, any focus on love. And this is, to me is interesting, because Crowley didn't. Crowley actually speaks of love again and again and again, the love of Nuit, the love of Babylon, the love as this fundamental energy in the cosmos. Now, Crowley was every inch a bad person as Hubbard was. I mean, let's not you know, fool ourselves. Crowley was a terrible father, terrible husband, terrible friend, terrible everything. I guess I'm one of the Thelemites out there that just don't like Crowley. I don't like Crowley at all, but I like his work, and the fact that he despite being he was definitely a serious narcissist. I'm not sure as much as I'm not sure he was a malignant narcissist like Hubbard, like Hubbard was, but he was definitely a huge narcissist with all the problems that brings to the table. But he never ever shied away from putting the focus on love as much as will. It wasn't just will; it was will and love. Those two were fundamental, and that's why, you know, that's why for me the system is valid. Despite Crowley.
Well, I think that we see Hubbard's intent, and this might help clarify a little bit why he interpreted Thelema and Crowley's work the way that he did. Back in 1938, if we're to believe the lore of all of this, and I have no reason to not believe it, Hubbard wrote a manuscript, and he called it Excalibur, or the Dark Sword, or the One Command. And in that, and he refers to it in the affirmations, and he refers to it in other places, even in the works of Scientology, he talks about this manuscript. It wasn't a hidden away thing that he had written this. The manuscript itself is very mystical, though, because no one's ever seen the goddamn thing. Like, it's totally hidden away. Nobody's read this fucking thing. I can count 4 people that I know who have claimed to have ever seen it.
Wow.
And he wrote that it had, quote, freed you forever. The work of this Excalibur manuscript would free you forever from the fears of the material world and gave you material control over people. And that's a thing that's a recurring theme with Hubbard. He was big on control. And in fact, he said even in the works of Scientology, as part of the indoctrination process, that you have to get to a point where you can be controlled before you can control others, which sounds like some sort of, you know, Indian guru sort of statement of wisdom or something, but actually it's just complete nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, that's like you know, cult mentality, cult control mentality 101. Like, let's convince everybody to just be slaves. Now, that's something else, you know, you find in Thelema, that in the Thelemite is the one who's never a slave. So a Thelemite, there's a clause in the first degree OTO where you go through it, that you basically swear that you will not subject yourself to hypnotism or mesmerism or any other practice whereby your true will might be impaired, which is, you know, so it's quite
really.
It's quite clear. So I guess that
that's another thing Hubbard excised from the materials.
Oh, absolutely. It's clear to me that, you know, like he definitely saw what worked, and everything else he skirted around, and it's like, okay, how can I get away with this idea? How can I get away with this other idea? So yeah, I mean, to me, from what you just told me, like this Excalibur system, which is very interesting, like only 4 people ever saw it. It's something that actually I'm very curious to see if I can find out somehow. But
yeah, it's not on the internet. I'll tell you
yeah.
that. It is the actual physical copies of it only exist at the upper levels of Scientology at the L. Ron Hubbard archives, which are literally confidential location up in the hills
Wow.
of San Bernardino, I think. But you're not getting in there. I mean, they have that like razor wire cameras, armed guards. I mean, they take this shit seriously, and that's where it's located. So ain't nobody getting it. But I have spoken with I know of 3 living people who have seen it, and one person who I think has since passed, who was a fellow author in Hubbard's day, who spoke about it. I think his name was Arthur J. Burks. I think that was the guy. Anyway, he wrote a little bit about it and said it was a weird book, and it read weird, and it kind of left you with this sort of creepy feeling. And this business of giving you material control over people that Hubbard refers to is kind of the theme of what he's talking about.
Well, you know what? That to me sounds like somebody only getting one message of magic, because of course, you know, one big theme with magic is the controlling the spirits, right? You know, like the magician is the one who casts the circle and, you know, invoke or evoke the demon or an angel and then controls it. Now, there are ways, I mean, whereby magic could give you this kind of, let's say, ability, but you learn very quickly that it comes with costs that nobody really wants to spend, unless you become, you know, almost like obsessed, like Hubbard was, from what you teach me, from what you told me.
Hey everyone. Most of us are sticking close to home for the time being. So if you haven't signed up for the Great Courses Plus yet, now is the time to do it. The Great Courses gives me a window into real knowledge and understanding of the world that I just haven't found so conveniently anywhere else. It's hard to engage in critical thinking if you don't have the knowledge and resources at your fingertips to get the true data across a wide diversity of fields. With thousands of lectures from the world's best professors and experts, the Great Courses Plus is a great way for everyone to stay informed and engaged. Now it's particularly applicable since, in order to get through these rather turbulent times, we need to understand our current situation with reliable, fact-based courses like an introduction to infectious diseases, to learn about viruses, vaccines, and disease transmission. Money and banking, what everyone should know, to help contextualize the current stock market. Fighting misinformation, digital media literacy, to help interpret fact from fiction in the news. And then there's the kids, who can use this resource to help learn about math, science, and history while they're out of school. You can also use this time to pick up a new hobby like gardening, cooking, or practicing yoga. Even how to speak a new language. With the Great Courses Plus app, we can watch or listen at any time from a phone, tablet, or internet-connected TV. Now is the perfect time to get started. The Great Courses Plus is giving my listeners a free trial, and it's only $10 a month when you sign up for a quarterly plan. Sign up today using my special URL to get started. Find all the details at thegreatcoursesplus.com/critical. Remember, thegreatcoursesplus.com/critical.
This is actually very interesting, because another thing that came out in our chats is the fact that, you know, Hubbard got inspired, let's say, from yet another tenet of magic, tenet of Thelema, and that is, you know, the knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel. Like, he claimed that he had like a guardian spirit, I think you used to call it. Now, the knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel, it's, I would say, the first fundamental goal that everybody who sets up onto an initiatory path will have to reach. I would go even further and say that you're not doing any real magic up until you achieve that specific state. and I mentioned it before, like, the solar consciousness state. Everything you do before, it's almost like going to the gym to bulk up before going to do the Olympics. So imagine, like, there's a lot of work that you have to put into this experience. There's a lot of preparation, a lot of dedication, a lot of will, and eventually you achieve this connection, which can be described in a myriad of different ways. Crowley himself, during his lifetime, had very different and from time to time conflicting ideas of what the Holy Guardian Angel is. Just a little bit of history for our listeners. The concept of the Holy Guardian Angel does not start with Thelema, does not start with Crowley. It's a traditional idea in magic. That is that each magician, each initiate has a specific link with the divine, with the personal divine, that once fully unlocked, achieved, enables the magician and initiate to properly work the magic of light, the real magic that's out there.
Let me just clarify one thing you just said, just for our listeners and for me. The personal divine. Mm-hmm. How is that a different concept from the grand divine, the creator or angels or something like that? What is that personal divine?
The way I understand it, and I always like to tell that this is my sure. ideas on the matter, because it's a very tricky topic. There are different layers of divinity, and they start with the experience of humanity, and then they go up or down depending on which part you direct your compass to. They go up in levels of exaltation. That is, you can perceive the divine in the world, you can perceive the divine in nature, and then you can start to become more focused and perceive the divine in the most exalted part of yourself, the way you see yourself. And then eventually you can go even further after you got to that point, and you can start to see the divine in the everything, in the all. I would say that that's the specific moment whereby you move from a more magical perception of the world to a more mystical perception of the world. The two things, the two terms might seem the same, but there's a nuance there, and that is in a magical perspective, in magic, there's a direction. You are directing your experience in wherever you want to go, pretty much. Whereby in a mystical experience, you become receptive, you become accepting of the all, you become in touch with the all. So that's I understand that this is pretty much like my understanding of this and the way I categorize it. But in many ways, this is something that you find in Thelema as well, where at the beginning Crowley speaks, the Holy Guardian Angel has his own Holy Guardian, like the best version of himself. He is a higher self, if we want to use a pseudo-psychological term. And then eventually, as he gets older and maybe his understanding of it becomes higher, he gets to the point where divinity becomes the all. In Thelema, we have this difference between the god forms or gods like Babylon and Therion, which are on a simple level. They're like the divine masculine and divine feminine, but then they have even higher counterparts in Hadith and Nuit, which are again the divine masculine and divine feminine. But then again, at that level, it becomes more about the difference between the point and the circumference, and the point representing the potential of everything that could ever be, and the circumference representing the actualization of everything that could ever be. And so maybe here you can see the difference between a personal divine and a more macrocosmic divine, omnicomprehensive divine. Yeah, and we're ranting a little bit now. So
Well, no, I'm fascinated by what you're saying, and I don't think you're ranting at all. I think I'm following with what you're talking about. You know, you're talking about a specific belief system here, and the idea being, if I'm following you and and I'm asking if I am, in saying that, you know, when you're engaging in magic or ritual magic or the kind of thing where you're, you know, casting a spell or something, you're focusing directed will or attention to a goal. It's a goal-oriented sort of activity, whereas and I'm not trying to I'm not trying to oversimplify. I'm just trying to give a, you know, kind of, this is where I'm tracking, as opposed to like this mystical open experience where it's more of a passive, you're observing, or you're kind of getting a window into this powerhouse of divine, whatever
yeah,
you want to call it. I mean, I suppose you could also say it's a spiritual experience, or,
yeah,
you know, it's like this sort of otherness that is life, that is reality, that is energy, magic, whatever. You're kind of tapping into that and becoming aware of that, and that's like, oh, that maybe that's the glue that puts the universe together. I don't know, but whatever it
yeah,
is,
yeah, yeah. I
that's,
mean,
you know,
that's
is that, am
that's
I?
that's absolute. That's absolute.
Yeah,
You're getting it. That's absolutely
yeah,
it. Absolutely.
great.
Back to the Holy Guardian Angel.
Yes, please.
That's a fundamental step, like especially in Thelema, because the knowledge and conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel is the step that allows each and everyone to discover their true wills, and then to start doing their true wills, which again, it's the principal tenet of Thelema. Without that, there's nothing else. So,
Right.
and for me, it was fascinating to find out that Hubbard, you know, claimed to have a connection with a guardian spirit of some sorts.
Yes, he did. And I'd like to I have a couple other questions about the concept of it, and then I want to dive into exactly what Hubbard said about this. It is this is one of the first steps, you said, in this process of moving through these levels of indoctrination or education. Contacting this entity or this guardian angel or guardian spirit or whatever we want to call it, we are talking about an actual entity, not just a nebulous sort of energy field or awareness. We're talking about being in touch with something that is like a divine figure of some kind.
Now that's the problem right there, because
Yeah, okay, good.
because as I told you, Crowley had many conflicting ideas about what the guardian angel is, and even today, Thelemites, initiates have many conflicting ideas of what the Holy Guardian Angel is. Some will tell you that yes, it's an external spirit that looks over you, and you can contact them and talk to them like we are talking right now. Some others will tell you that no, what you discover eventually is that it's a fraction of your ego. It's a higher level of your unconscious. Personally, I believe where I stand right now, for me, the experience is all these things and none of these things at the same time.
Sure.
The fact for me is that the proof in the pudding of the Holy Guardian Angel, if you want, is that it should be some sort of experience that teaches you, that tells you what to do next, how to react to whatever happens in your life, how to solve whatever problems that might or might not arise. And when it comes especially to magic, the Holy Guardian Angel is the only teacher. When you can join the OTO, you can join the AA, you can join my Patreon, and I can tell you, how the steps to get to the knowledge and conversation. But once you have unlocked that, there's no other teacher. There's you and your angel. If somebody will see it as a face that appears in a mirror while you're scrying and tells you things, that's fine. If it's a voice in your head, that's fine. If it's a hunch, a feeling, that's fine. And Crowley, during his life, he would write, "Oh no, the guardian angel is this, the guardian angel is this, the guardian angel." Like, it's funny because he would go up and down, up and down, up and down. I think that in the end, he realized that it's such a unique and personal experience, which is why I call it the personal divine, that it's down for each and everybody to come up with their own understanding of what it is. But it's undeniable that there are some steps you can follow to get there, and once you have it, you know it. There's no doubt about it. So yeah, I mean, I guess this is where again where maybe Hubbard got the idea, but then deviate completely from it, because
yeah, it's kind of interesting. Let's kind of go over a little bit of this. Hubbard wrote a whole bunch of pages and pages and pages. They just go on and on and on of handwritten notes that were found by a Scientologist, a Sea Org member in the late 70s, early 80s. I think it was late 70s. His name was Jerry Armstrong, and he was in the Sea Org at the time, and he had found Hubbard had a lot of stuff. Hubbard was, I think in other times, Hubbard would almost have been considered a hoarder. He had a ton of his own stuff that he'd carried around with him all through the world. And these papers were found in his personal effects while he was still alive, but I think he forgot about them. Oh, wow. I don't think he expected these things to ever see the light of day. These were written in the 1940s. We're not sure exactly where, but we do know that that the Church of Scientology itself has not refuted the validity of these documents that are in Hubbard's writing when they were submitted into an actual court of law. They had the opportunity to say that's not Hubbard, and they didn't do that.
And right? instead they say no, that's okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think they thought it was just kind of going to go away because at the time it happened was in the 80s when no one knew the internet was coming.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't think they ever had a clue that this was going to get, a Wikipedia page of its own. And
by the way, I'm gonna interrupt you there for a second, because honestly, this is the same problem or the same situation that you find with the OTO nowadays. The OTO has been, desperate to keep secret what they do because that's their only selling point. But they never envisioned like the internet. And like I said, it's like the OTO, the modern OTO, incorporated in '85. So in the '85, nobody ever envisioned the fact that we could get everything, basically at the flick of a switch, pretty much. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's pretty clear that Hubbard is writing these after getting involved in magic, because he says so he refers to some of his magical work in the sections of this. He writes, for example, that, quote, that my magical work is powerful and effective. This is one of his affirmations. That I believe in my gods and spiritual things. That the numbers 7, 25, and 16 are not unlucky or evil for me. So he's got these sort of things that he's writing down, and that masturbation was no sin or crime, et cetera, et cetera. So then we go into him talking about various and multiple physical problems that he had, which I will touch on in a little bit as to why I think this is important, is your eyes are getting progressively better. He had very bad eyesight. They become bad when you use them as an excuse to escape the Naval Academy. You have no reason to keep them bad, he says. He's talking about his own eyes. He's keeping them bad, he says. Your stomach trouble you used as an excuse to keep the Navy from punishing you. Your hip is a pose. You have a sound hip. It never hurts. Your shoulder never hurts. Well, clearly he's writing these things because they do.
They do, obviously.
Right? Your foot was an alibi. The injury is no longer needed. So he's literally, sort of struggling with these beliefs that he's causing his own physical problems because he's faking it to get out of stuff, but then it's becoming real. And without getting into the complexities of Scientology belief, let me please just say for any former Scientologists out there, yes, Hubbard was surfacking. that's a technical term in Scientology. And it's became a very prominent part of Scientology methodology later, that people would do this. They would create false injuries or false sicknesses to get out of something and then get stuck with it for real.
Wow.
So this was a big thing in Scientology, right? So specifically now getting to the guardian angel, there's some I'm going to read you all of the parts of that, or some of the parts. Yeah, here they are the quotes regarding the guardian angel. This is all from the, they were all called in the Wikipedia page on this. And it says, in 1945, Parsons had written to Aleister Crowley. Jack Parsons wrote to Crowley to inform him that Hubbard had become his magical partner, quote unquote, and described Hubbard's beliefs. He says, this is Parsons saying, from some of his experiences, I deduced that he is in direct touch with some higher intelligence, possibly his guardian angel. He describes his angel as a beautiful winged woman with red hair, whom he calls the Empress, and who has guided him through his life and saved him many times. Now, let's all remember that the Empress is also a tarot card.
Yeah.
Hubbard appears to have continued to believe in his guardian angel well after leaving Parsons' circle, and wrote in his affirmations, quote, "Nothing can intervene between you and your guardian. She cannot be displaced because she is too powerful. She does not control you, she advises you. The most thrilling thing in your life is your love and consciousness of your guardian." This was a man who had 2 kids back home, a wife. He was setting up with another girl in Parsons' place. I mean, and this was the most thrilling thing in his life, was his love and consciousness of his guardian. She has copper red hair, long braids, a lovely Venusian face, a white gown belted with jade squares. She wears gold slippers. I'm sure some of the symbology
absolutely.
might be.
So there's all symbology that makes sense. It's almost like he knew it and he wrote it down in order to make a more convincing image, if in many ways. I think what's interesting to me when I look at the affirmation, we can go 2 ways about it, and that is, one is that he was genuinely engaging with magical practices. And like I say, like that, because there are specific magical practices you can do, and there you can repeat, you can teach, in order for people to get to the knowledge and conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel. And let's say that since he was engaging with Parsons in various magical workings, when Parsons writes to Crowley and say he is my magical partner, that's a specific reference, because Crowley used to have magical partners as well, both men and women. And he would, with them, he would, enact various kind of rituals from time to time of sexual nature in order to contact higher intelligences. Now, contacting higher intelligence is important in magic, because that's how you get further teaching, how you get to do magic better, pretty much. As I said before, the main teacher is your Holy Guardian Angel, but you can work with your Holy Guardian Angel and with other magicians in order to get better communications, better informations, better systems. A famous example of this is the John Dee and Kelly receiving, the Enochian system from the Enochian angels in the 1600s, and we're talking about historical figure there. It happened across the history of magic, and what's interesting again in the affirmations of Hubbard is that either he is genuinely engaging with the system and having, receiving ideas, receiving visions, receiving experiences, or what might be also interesting to consider is that since Hubbard is a con man and is a swindler, he maybe was actually writing these things down to convince Jack Parsons that he was having, you know, a real magical experience. Because something that the listeners needs to know, a specific thing that each magical teacher will teach is that the student must keep a magical diary, and that's a simple diary, a diary where you write down everything. This is especially true in Thelema, because Thelema wants to, while not being science, as I said at the beginning, wants to try and apply the scientific method as much as possible in this. And the basics of the scientific method is, you know, put together a theory, test the theory, write down you know, whatever comes from the theory, that comes from that experiment, and then, you know, come back to it and see what it looks like. From most of the listeners will not believe it, but the reality here is that magic is not very much different than going to lab and test other theories. It's just that, of course, it's not science. It's something different. But the practice of the magical diary is fundamental. And Parsons would have told, no doubt, would have told Hubbard, okay, show me your magical diary. I taught you this series of practices. What came out of it? Because that's what Parsons would have done with his own teachers. Parsons would have done with Crowley directly. Parsons and Crowley never met. Crowley never went to Pasadena, never met Hubbard, never met Parsons. But Parsons was in touch with Crowley. Hubbard was never in touch with Crowley, despite what he claimed afterward, that they were good friends. Not at all. In fact, there's a surviving letter from Aleister Crowley to Carl Germer, which was the leader of the OTO in the United States at the time, that kind of, you know, depicts both Parsons and Hubbard in very, let's say, less than nice terms.
So yes, I've seen that letter actually, and he says, I think Crowley says flat out that it looks like Hubbard's trying to con him.
Absolutely.
So even from that distance, he saw through Hubbard's nonsense.
Absolutely, because again, in many ways, we have to admit that, you know, the similar sees the similar. Crowley was a bit of a swindler himself, so he definitely could have seen, you know, the same attitude in Hubbard.
That's right. You know, I think it also speaks a little bit to Hubbard's skill and manipulation on a one-on-one level, that in person, absolutely, he was taking Parsons for a ride, and he was. There's no question about it. You know, we will discuss the seriousness with which Hubbard might have approached this, but make no mistake, the whole time he was taking Parsons for a ride, and Parsons never saw it until it was too late. Crowley saw it from a distance very clearly, so I think that speaks a little bit to Hubbard's ability to manipulate people. You know.
Oh, but that's no doubt to me. I mean, Hubbard was a master manipulator. It was absolutely, it was great at it. I mean, if Scientology still exists to this day, is because he managed to con many people in ways that maybe, like I said, Crowley maybe wanted. I do think from time to time, if Crowley would have been happy to see, you know, Thelema become Scientology at some point. In many ways, that's what he wanted, like something that became almost mainstream. And Scientology is not mainstream, but everybody knows about Scientology. At least they have heard about it.
Yep.
Trust me, no one knows about Thelema apart, you know, the very few people that are really invested in it.
Right. So yeah, it's true.
So, you know, like, back to the affirmations, I cannot tell you if Hubbard, you know, was doing the work, as we say, or it was just like writing it down. It's definitely true that it feels real, as in that's wrong. It sounds real. It sounds like everything you read in the affirmations is almost ticks all the boxes. Like, okay, you know, this is it, like, that's it. It's almost like the perfect magical diary. Like, if one of my students would send me like a diary like this, like, oh wow, that's a lot of work, well done. But it feels like almost too well done, you know.
I get it. I get what you're saying with this, and let's conjecture a little bit, because it's kind of fun. And here's how I look at this as a former Scientologist and somebody who spent a lot of time trying to figure Hubbard's head out. I'm not, I'm not saying I've got it all figured out, but here's where I'm coming from on it is, uh, he definitely makes it clear this is all pre-Scientology. Hubbard's not trying to impress anyone. Maybe there's an audience of one here with Jack Parsons,
Hmm.
perhaps, or perhaps he really meant it. We know for a fact that Hubbard did have an ulcer, he had conjunctivitis, he had a hip problem, he had an eye problem. We know these things are true. We know he did not suffer from any war wounds following World War II. Nothing significant really happened to him. He never really saw combat, but boy, could he tell a whole lot of tall tales about all the combat he saw in all the theaters everywhere, and blah, blah. He talked a good talk, but he really didn't have anything. But he was a troubled guy, and he was also a bit of a storyteller, pathological liar, actually, and serial philanderer. So we know those things were all true, and we know that he had zero interest in going back home to his wife and kids after the war. So he ends up in Parsons' place. We know that he practiced sex magic with Parsons. Oh, and by the way, I'm sure I have not really asked you any hard questions about that. Let me segue real fast and do that because it might speak to this a little bit. Parsons and Hubbard were engaged in activity that an objective observer might look at and say, okay, there's something freaky going on there, like homosexual activity, blood, semen. I mean, what the hell were they doing, and what is that connected to? I should have asked you about this earlier, so since it just is coming to mind now, what's up with that? And is that something, dare I ask, is that something you engage in, or what is that?
So, lots of people discover Thelema because of sex magic, or what they think they know about sex magic, what they read about sex magic. To try, let me try to explain it as easier as I can. Sex magic is a practice whereby you use the energized enthusiasm of orgasm in order to fix an idea to fix an idea so that idea can come into fruition. Okay. By doing that, it's not just about having sex and that happen, because it's not just having orgies and that happen, but you like with everything else in magic, you must train for it. And once you do it, it's not about your pleasure or even the pleasure of the other person, but it's more about using that energized enthusiasm in order to magically create something. As I said before, this is not science. So I'm not even going to try to pretend to say,
that much is clear. Yes.
I'm going to explain you how it is up.
Right.
But is this something that I engage with? Yes, it's something I engage with. Yeah, that's what you learn at the higher levels of OTO, higher degrees of OTO. That's what you learn at the higher grades of the AA. But where Parsons and Hubbard engaging into this? Absolutely yes. Yes, it means having sex. It means possibly mixing the fluids, and by maybe then ingesting the fluids or using the fluids of the intercourse onto a talisman. There's many different ways you can get to do this. Crowley used to the other reason why Crowley really invested into the OTO. One, as we said before, because it was Paramasonic, Freemasonry was popular at the time. He thought he would get like a vehicle for the promulgation of Thelema. The other is because the OTO had specific secrets of sex magic, specific ways of engaging with sex magic, and that's definitely something that, so as I said, like Agape Lodge number 2 in Pasadena was the only real lodge of the OTO working at the time. So of course they would engage in these things. What they were trying to do, basically, what would come up called the Babylon working. What they were trying to do is they were trying to contact the goddess Babylon, which in an incredibly simplified way, I can tell you, it's the divine feminine. And they were trying to use sex magic to embody the goddess Babylon onto like a real human being. Parsons and Hubbard would then go on and claim that the operation was successful, and the goddess Babylon was eventually incarnated into Marjorie Cameron, which became Hubbard's third wife.
Parsons, I think.
Sorry, Parsons, not Hubbard. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, since you led me into this segue, yeah, they were doing freaky stuff, and it's part of the more advanced practices of magic, and for those who maybe listening to this is so weird, this is the same, just under different cultural lenses than certain practices of Indian Tantra. The idea of using the sex act in order to rejuvenate the body, to achieve deeper states of consciousness. The cultural lenses matter. So in many ways, since the 80s and since sex magic became more of a thing you discuss, again, the 80s onward, then there's stories of people that went into ashrams in India trying to, discover the real roots of the Western sex magic back into the Tantra, and coming out incredibly disappointed because they find out that there's little sex, and it's all about maybe not eating meat and not eating fish. But yes,
right.
Like the root of sex magic is the Indian Tantras, and at the end of the day is a way of using the energy of orgasm, the energies of sex, in order to achieve deeper stages of consciousness.
Okay, I get that. And would it be used, or could you conceive of it being used in a way to heal oneself? I mean, could Hubbard have conceivably been doing this with the idea that maybe his ulcers would go away, or maybe his eyesight would improve, or he would stop feeling physically horrible all the time? Would that be a reasonable idea of what he might go into that with?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Crowley tried for many years to sell the supreme secret of the OTO, that is sex magic, as a way of cure all, like the stone of the wise, the elixir of eternal life. I have grounds to believe that Crowley did believe it, because again, this is something that you imagine, like the times. Science is not as advanced as it is now, and people tend to believe these things more deeply. Let's put it like that. At the time, Crowley definitely believed that the supreme secret of the OTO, the sex magical secret of the OTO, could cure yourself. Crowley died of pneumonia. So the reality there is that
oops. Okay, man.
I've been working sex magical practices most of my life now. I mean, I'm 42, let's say 20 years. And I can tell you that they put you in a better state. They make you feel healthy. But I still have my eyesight. It's bad. That's what it is.
Yeah, you still got glasses on. Yeah.
Exactly. Someone actually... It's funny until it's not, but I'm gonna say it because it makes you think. Somebody recently posted, exhorted the leaders of the current OTO Incorporate in California, say, given the times we're living and the situations around the world, since you have the supreme secret that will cure all, why are you not using to address the pandemic? Of course, no reply was forthcoming.
Exactly.
So did Hubbard believe that he could get like the supreme secret that could cure his ulcers, cure his? Yes, I believe so. I believe he was drawn to it in order to, first of all, set himself right, and then maybe find a way to sell it to other people.
Well, I think that's actually not far off the beam, because and of course, I have to comment on the dearth of faith healers in hospitals right now. Hello, anybody. I mean, if you really got it, now is the time to go make a fortune. I mean, if you want to prove to the world, now is the time.
Yeah,
Same
absolutely.
with Dianeticists and all these guys. They're all just, it's just crickets from all of these people. Um. Anyway, in terms of Hubbard's motivations, okay, so having set the scene and having just confirmed that with you, I very much believe that he was a willing participant in the sex magic rituals with Parsons because he was looking for some kind of cure to what was ailing him. He was he was telling the VA the whole time that this was all going down about his, and for years following, he would be telling the VA about his physical woes and his troubles and his problems and how he was not able to produce, at the same rate he was able to pre-war and all of that. So I think there was some conning going on there and some, oh, woe is me. But I also think that based on what he was writing and what we know about him, he felt like he was suffering from some stuff and he thought maybe this was an outlet to deal with it. It may or may not be, in fact, that he might have even gone all in. I have a question. You mentioned this being the sex magic stuff being at the highest levels. Hubbard was only at Parsons' place for a few months. Is it conceivable that somebody could rise in the ranks that quickly to be exposed to that level of information that fast?
Absolutely, yes, it is
Okay.
conceivable because the ladder never really existed. In fact, the strict ladder has been implemented only from 85 onwards. I would say even actually the 90s onwards with the reconstructed OTO that we have nowadays. At the time of Crowley, you would have a series of 9 degrees, which in fact are 21 because there's sub degrees here and there. But Crowley would initiate everyone to the 9th degree, the top degree, if people would show proof that they knew what was the practice, what was the process. And since Crowley was speaking to people that were like all very like nerds in many way of magic, so they would like go and research and go and practice. The case was for many people that were just, I don't want to say fast tracked to 9th degree, but that's the spirit. So it is absolutely conceivable that Hubbard would come and would study it and then would show to Parsons, say, hey, this is what it's about sex, right? And this is how you do it. And Parsons would say, yes, so you're now like a member of the sovereign sanctuary of the Gnosis of the 9th degree, and you are a holy father, and then now we can work together. So it's absolutely true. What happened in the modern OTO is that since the people at the top right now, Bill Breeze, James Wasserman, these people know they have nothing. They just inherited some papers. They bought copyrights of Crowley, and they've been trying to make a living out of it since the 80s. But also they know that there's a lot of people that want the experience. So what they compartmentalize and they structuralize as it was supposed to be on paper, but it never was, because like I said, the OTO nowadays, the OTO that I joined and the OTO that I left, that now I'm so critical of, it's in many ways is doing what Crowley envisioned to a degree. But the reality there is that there's no need, because once you learn what it is, you got it. There's no need to go through all the prologue, pretty much.
Got it. Totally get it on that. Okay, so a conceivable timeline then is Hubbard goes in, meets Parsons, starts finding out about this stuff, or already has some hint of it, goes all in. We're thinking Hubbard, I'm thinking Hubbard probably had, a real motivation to try to make this work, because he went all in. I mean, he did stuff that, your run of the mill person wouldn't necessarily consider doing
No, absolutely.
with Parsons out in the desert. And
Mm-hmm.
they can do this Babylon working. Crowley, by the way, happened to think this was nuts.
Yeah.
He thought they were crazy for what they were doing, but Parsons was a rule breaker. He was not somebody who followed standards. He was doing his own, laying his
His
own
own,
track, so to speak. That was his life. That's how he did it,
he
you
was
know?
following. He was following his own will.
Yes, exactly. That was his deal. And I'm sure Hubbard also, from what I was reading earlier from Excalibur, that was from 1938, years before this. And I think this was Hubbard thinking that this guardian angel and this whole circumstance was just was some kind of a karmic fate sort of thing for him, that he just happened to walk into this was going to be perfect, and he goes all in. Well, guess what? It didn't cure a goddamn thing. He still had bad eyes. He still had bad this, bad that. And Hubbard was nothing if not results oriented. He definitely gives that attitude through all of his lectures. He's all about, I don't care why this works, I just want it to work.
Yeah.
We don't have to wonder why. We don't have to wonder how. We just need to know it works. So he was very taka. And I don't think that was a fake Connie thing. I think that's how he was. I think he was a very impatient man. So a few months, he gives it a go, doesn't work. Maybe this whole time he's setting up the con, or maybe he just goes, well, this didn't work. Fuck this guy, and I'm just going to take his money and take his woman. And that's basically, however that sequence happened, that was the result. After a few months, Hubbard was like, okay, great. And they do this stuff, and then Hubbard ends up taking off with Sarah, and which was Jack's girl when Hubbard got there.
Mm-hmm.
But, Parsons was all about preaching polyamory and free love. It wasn't like they were married. And that was kind of,
I always remember that Sarah was the younger sisters of Parsons' Parsons' wife, Helen.
Oh, so, that's right.
Yeah, I mean,
that's right.
They were definitely into swapping and
yes.
changing. So I would say that in many ways, we have proof that Parsons was not completely okay with Sarah leaving, but he kind of accepted it, because he was not okay about the swindle and losing the money. So
yep.
The story goes that eventually he tracked them down in Florida, I think, and he invokes Barzabel, the angel of Mars, and lo and behold, they have to come back because a terrible storm. That happened.
It's actually funny that it did. They were out. They were trying to sail away. There was a storm. They had to come back, and Parsons had tracked them down to Florida from California, and he took them to court, and he actually got some of his money back, and and that was that.
Something that I wanted to segue for a second is, like, you mentioned that Hubbard was the results oriented. Let's doesn't matter if this is true or not. Let's get something out of it.
Yes,
it's funny because that's something else that he got from Crowley. Because in Liber O, which is one of Crowley's more practical exercises, it is said, and I'm going to read, in this book it is spoken of Sephiroth and the paths, of spirits, of conjurations, of gods, spheres, planes, and many other things which might or might not exist. It's immaterial whether these things exist or not. By doing certain things, certain results happen. So, that's something else.
Oh my God, Hubbard, it's almost word for word. I'm telling you, almost word for word from some of Hubbard's writings.
So, you can say,
every time I think I finally found something of Hubbard's. Nope. It was from someone else.
Well, let's say that he was very good at getting inspired.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was a very inspired child. Let's put it that way. Well, listen, Marco, is there anything else on this topic that you think that I missed here?
No, I think we did a good job at laying the land of the connections between Thelema and magic and Scientology. I mean, it's kind of evident to me that yes, Scientology has a lot of inspiration, got a lot of inspiration from Thelema, got a lot of inspiration from magic. It is true that they're not one and the same. They diverge in many points, but Hubbard got his ideas from Crowley. That's no denying for me.
Yeah, there really isn't. There really isn't. And I really want to thank you for helping me to sort and clarify and figure out some of this stuff, because you really have helped me a lot personally in my own understanding of how Scientology is an occult practice in its core principles, and what it's really all about, and how it was put together is straight out of the occult. Now it's developed into this whole mainstream, well, not mainstream, but system, and it's very institutionalized, and it's got all these very strict rules and guidelines now, which is very different from how Thelema and magic is practiced. So it's not same anymore, but its roots come straight out of this, and are very, very, very much still all about this stuff.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you, Chris. It's been very good. It's been very good for me as well. I mean, I learned a lot about things that I was always curious about, and now I've seen it pretty much. Yeah, I think it will always be interesting to eventually find out if we'll ever be able to find out if Hubbard was an actual serious student of magic for a while, or if he was just doing it to do the right thing, to show Parsons and Crowley that he was onto it. But maybe we'll never find out. So.
It's so hard. The best we've got are these affirmations, and we've got Parsons' leftover diaries or remaining, the journals he had, which is why we know he was a little jealous when Hubbard took off with Sarah and stuff. And true enough, I don't know that there's going to be any more revelations. So, conjecture is all we've got at this point. But I think we've got some pretty good ideas of what went down there and why. And had I known any of this when I was in Scientology, I would have looked at L. Ron Hubbard very differently, which is, I'm positive, why the church works so hard to... they can't deny. This is what's so funny, is they literally tell bald-faced lies about his war record, his academic achievements. But on this, they can't deny that he was at Parsons' place and that these things did happen. The church just says, they whitewash it with this fantasy that he was there as an undercover operative for law enforcement.
That's what I heard as well. Like he was working to save a young woman from a satanist. And it's like, first of all, Thelema is not satanic. Whatever. I mean, it's like it's funny. It's a nice spin, but it's not the reality.
Exactly. It's just more spin of spin. So there you go. So there's some history there for you, folks. I hope that this was clarifying. I hope this was illuminating. I hope we gave, a window into this. This was not an attempt to break down all of Thelema or all of the OTO. It was an attempt to show what it's basically about, where it basically comes from, and how Scientology fits into that and eventually actually came from it. So I think we did that job. And Marco, again, thank you for helping me with that.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's been a pleasure to be here on your network, and that's it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, no problem, man. Folks, questions, comments, feedback, good, bad, or sideways, leave them in the comment section here on YouTube or at sensiblyspeaking.com. Okay, folks, see you next week. Bye-bye.